Well, I hope that your day has gone well. I hope that if it hasn't, it will be better for you maybe tomorrow. I'm excited about studying James tonight. You know, like we've been saying for the past, I feel like month now, or at least I've been saying for the past month. We're winding down with the book of James, and for some reason we still find ourselves in the book of James tonight. I'm sorry, I mean this when I say this. We are almost done with the book of James. I cannot continue to go on in the book of James even if I wanted to, because there's only 5 chapters, and we are starting chapter 5 tonight. Before we do that, we want to let you know that if you are struggling in any way and you are hurting, we want to let you know that we love you and we are praying for you. We're praying for you to get better. And if we can do anything for you, we'd be happy to do that. We just ask that you would ask us. You might remember last week we talked about a subject that we tend to shy away from. We talked about death, and specifically we talked about, you remember James says there's a person that might say, let us go to such and such a city, we'll spend a year there, buy and sell and make a profit, and people plan to do things all the time without ever thinking that there might not be a tomorrow. We shouldn't be prideful in thinking that we will live on till tomorrow. That's up to God. We talked about that. But tonight we're in James chapter 5. So if you haven't read James chapter 5, please pause the video, go read James chapter 5, and come back. If you have read James chapter 5, we'll do like we normally do, and we will start in the section that we are going to be in tonight. James chapter 5, we'll start in verse 1, and we'll read down to verse 6. Come now, you rich, weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you. Your riches have rotted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and your silver have corroded, and their corrosion will be evidence against you and will eat your flesh like a fire. You have laid up treasure in the last days. Behold, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, are crying out against you, and the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. You have lived on the earth in luxury and in self-indulgence. You have fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered the righteous person. He does not resist you. Wow. I mean, in the span of 6 verses, James gets pretty heavy, and he paints the rich in a very negative way here. But it's not for no reason. I mean, in the first verse, though, we read, come now, you rich, weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you. It's not looking good for the rich. They're going through something that they don't want to be going through. Miseries are coming upon the rich, James says in chapter 5. James, in talking to them, your riches have rotted and your garments are moth-eaten. Rich people, I don't think this is a surprise, but most people who are rich tend to have a lot of things. Now that might be stereotypical, but I think for the most part that there's truth to that. Rich people have a lot of things. James plays off that image a little bit. Your riches have rotted, and your garments, what people would buy with their money, their garments, their clothes, are moth-eaten. Now, if somebody's riches have rotted, and somebody's garments are moth-eaten, what does that say? Well, that says their riches and their garments, they're no longer useful. They are useless. They have no more value at all. Your gold and your silver have corroded. Well, if gold and silver corrode, that would definitely decrease the value of the gold and silver. and their corrosion will be evidence against you and will eat your flesh like a fire. Your gold and your silver have corroded, and their corrosion will be evidence against you and will eat your flesh like a fire. The rich here in James chapter 5 have a problem. They have multiple problems. But a major problem that the rich have here in James chapter 5 is they hoard their riches. It's true that when their gold and silver corrode, their riches will no longer be useful. That's true. But that further illustrates the problem that they have, like we just said. They hoard their riches. How is it that their gold and silver is able to corrode? It's able to corrode because they have so much of it. And because they have so much of it and they've hoarded it and they haven't given any of it away, but they've just wanted more and more and more and more, James says their corrosion will be evidence against you and will eat your flesh like a fire. They didn't do with their riches what they were supposed to do. In fact, their riches made their behavior very, very nasty. We're gonna see that right here in verse 4. Behold, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, are crying out against you, and the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. Well, the people described here in James chapter 5, but we know they're rich, and rich people tend, I guess this is another stereotype, but it's definitely one that James still plays off of. They have people who do work for them. There's people here in James chapter 5 who mow the fields of the rich. Now, we've already said that the rich here have a problem with hoarding their money. They hoard their gold and their silver, and eventually that's going to come back to bite them. James has painted that picture. They're so attached to their money. They're so set on storing all their money up for themselves and hoarding their money that the people who do work for them receive no wages at all, because the rich people here have kept them back. Oh, somebody's done work for the rich. But for some reason, the rich here, they felt like they don't owe the laborers anything. They're not worthy of it. And because they're not worthy of it, they're going to keep it back and they're going to hoard it for themselves. Now, this, what we're talking about ought to ring a bell maybe on the section about partiality. The rich here in James chapter 5, they would never, if they mowed somebody's field, they would never want somebody to not pay them. But they think they're better than other people. They think they're better than the lower class, and because of that, they can do as they want. It's partiality. And you remember what James said about partiality. If we want to be servants of the Lord Jesus Christ, there cannot be any partiality among us. Behold, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, are crying out against you, and the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. You have lived on the earth in luxury and self-indulgence. The rich, their life has been great. Whatever they've wanted, they've got. Nothing has been kept back from them. If they wanted something, they go out and get it, or they send somebody to go out and get it. If they want something done, don't worry about it. They don't have to do it. We'll hire somebody to do it. And when we hire somebody to do it, we'll let them work for us, but we're not going to pay them because we want what we want, and we want money. And we want a lot of money. And we don't care how we get that money. We just know that we want money, and we want to use that money on ourselves and nobody else. They're living what they think is a good life. They're living a life that they think most people would want to live. We're all rich. We've talked about that before. On a worldly scale, we are rich. We're very rich. What do we do with our money? It's easy to think that if we had more money, we would be able to help more people. And we would give more if we had more money. And we would do this if we had more money. And life would be better if we had more money. But I want to ask tonight, in reading James chapter 5, would we really be better off with more money? I know a lot of people who are rich. Yeah, I'm talking now, not from a world, I'm talking like now from an American standpoint, you know, millionaires, how we usually tend to classify the rich. I know some good guys that are millionaires. I also know some millionaires that aren't so good. In fact, when they got more money, it changed them. It changed their life. If we're not helping other people out with the money that we have, and we're not, even enjoying life with what God has given us, and somehow we think that if we just had more, we would be better off and we could help more people and we would give more, we're foolish to think that. If there's one thing that James chapter 5 teaches us, it is that money can change people, and not for the better most of the time, but for the worse. You have lived on the earth in luxury and in self-indulgence. You have fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered the righteous person. He does not resist you. You remember when we talked about in James chapter 3 where self-seeking exists, confusion and every evil thing are? In James chapter 4, you remember the section, you desire and do not have, so you murder. This idea of self-indulgence, this idea of selfishness, it's pictured right here again in James chapter 5 to describe the rich. And what have the rich done? What have the rich done? Well, they kept back wages. They've hoarded their money. They've lived in such a way that they get what they want, no matter the cost, even if they have to murder somebody. The righteous person here suffers because of the rich person. But James has some words of encouragement for the people that are being afflicted by the rich. Verse 7, be patient, therefore, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it until it receives the early and late rains. You also be patient. Establish your heart, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. There's times in our life when we probably feel like everybody and their brother is walking on top of us. In fact, we feel like we're a part of the ground, and where everywhere anybody steps, they're stepping on us. They're not treating us right. It's not fair what they're doing to us. We're afflicted. The rich in James chapter 5, they're being walked on. They're being stepped on. Some of them are being murdered. Many of them aren't being paid. And James says, be patient. It's probably not the answer that a lot of us like to hear when we're being afflicted and we're suffering. Be patient. Because we want things changed. We don't want to, we don't want to sit and suffer. We want God to take care of it, and we want God to take care of things now. But sometimes patience is key. James says, see how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it until it receives the early and latter rain. Farmers, when they go and they're growing fruit, they have to be patient. They would like to have the fruit right then. But that's not how things work. But what they know is that if it rains, and when it does rain, they will produce fruit. The rich here, they might not want to be patient, but they're able to be patient. And they're able to be patient because their patience gives them hope. And what is that hope? The hope is when the Lord comes, He is going to take care of the rich. The people that are afflicting them, He's going to take care of them. And they're not going to be able to get out of it. They're not going to be able to buy God off. God's going to hold them accountable. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. Do not grumble against one another, brothers, so that you may not be judged. Behold, the judge is standing at the door. Be patient. Don't jump the gun, guys. Don't jump the gun. Be patient. Let the Lord handle the situation. As an example of suffering and patience, brothers, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. Well, you think about a lot of prophets in the Bible. They had it rough. They did lots of times what God told them to do, and they were, they were just afflicted. But they were patient. Behold, we consider those blessed who remain steadfast. What does steadfastness mean? Steadfast means the ability to hold up under suffering. They don't fold. You have heard of the steadfastness of Job and seen the purpose of the Lord, how the Lord is compassionate and merciful. And that is where we're going to have to stop tonight, because I really want to talk a good bit about Job, and we're not going to be able to talk about Job in the next 30 seconds and do it justice, so we'll have to save that for next week. I hope that you have a great rest of the week, and I can't wait to see everybody Sunday. God bless.